Hello folks, YouTube people. This is Fred from RV Maintenance and Mechanical Things. From what I understand, people like to see a face with a video, but I'm not really big on selfies. What I got going here is the pumpkin truck again. And had this thing for 14 years. And lately it's deciding that it wants some attention. But it's not really the positive kind. So what's going on is I was driving down a street. This happened about a half a dozen times. First of all, I had an Excel DFI failure. That's on the YouTube channel. Now I'm not so certain whether it was Excel DFI or some wiring issues that I had developing over the years, because I found a pretty good short scorched carpet, and if that was negating the grounds, then that could have caused my problem. But anyway, it got updated to a fast controller. I don't have to do the fuel maps now. You got the right fuel injectors put in it, and now it's quitting. It quit about a half a dozen times since I worked on it in March, and 2 days in a row recently. So I decided to start tearing things apart, which I loathe to do, on something this custom and finished. Let me see if I can switch to the other view. Yeah. Well, I have to restart the video because once I go selfie, I don't know how to get it back the other side. Alright, continuing on with the saga. Don't know if you can see down in here very well, but there's a firewall connector right down in there. And my neighbor said it's a very common failure point. Now, I go to YouTube a lot to try to find things that I don't know about, and I find a lot of helpful information, but I've been able to find any information on why this thing should stop other than it's the ignition switch. If you're going down a road and the thing stops on you, and last time it was on turning a corner, then it's probably your ignition switch. So I'll go inside and I'll show you that. I replaced that. That's an interesting thing too. So anyway, to get at this connector, since it's a custom truck, and I'll show you, it's a lowrider, the body has been modified so that the wheel has clearance from the firewall when you drop it. And the previous owner had dragged this bulkhead connector with 20-inch tires at one point when he was frame dragging this down the road. So I just taped it up, but it's been fine for 14 years. Now it seems that's my issue, because if you wiggle that around, like I couldn't get it started this morning, so I came out here and pushed down on that, now it's running. So very aggravating. As you can see, it's kind of low to the ground, but that's ride height. That's not dropped. That's where she runs at. I've got blocks on top of the bags to keep it from hitting the ground, so that if there was some type of failure, there's enough room to wiggle it off the road anyway. That's the theory. This thing is heavily customized. Those fenders been puffed out. And right now I don't have my door poppers hooked up because I put in a new ignition switch. Isn't this fun? And part of this Clifford security system that was put in here included these wires, which work the door poppers, and it's a starter interrupt for the security system is wired into the harness. So basically what they did is excuse me, they just wackadoodled the ignition harness. So that's one of the things that made me suspect it. I have kept from pulling this thing out prior due to the fact I never wanted to deal with the wiring for the security system. So today it's going to get dealt with, I guess. One of the things you got to do, guys, when you're modifying a vehicle, at least in my mind, is you have to put in expansion panels, which I did up there. You probably can't see if I can get in here. Yeah, sorry for the swimming around, but yeah, it's not going to show me what I want to show you. But up in there is an expansion panel. You can see that one wire got hot from the transmission controller when I had a wiring mistake. But basically, you need to put in some distribution panels for your grounds and for your power. So more later as I get things put back together. Alright folks, hopefully you can see me because I can't seem to switch this phone back and forth from selfie to non-selfie. But anyway, the continuing saga of the pumpkin truck, and replaced the computer earlier this year. Then I had a situation after that, over a period of 6 months, it would just kill going down the road. Motor would shut off. You could shut off the ignition switch, just make sure you don't lock the steering, and restart it. And then it did it 2 days in a row here last month, and one of them was when I was turning a corner, and I ended up having to shut the key all the way off and restart. So with that electrical problem, I read online that, well, you go down the road, you hit a bump, your ignition switch stops. You know, your motor stops. It could be your ignition switch, right? So I was always suspect of this ignition switch, and I went to take it out a couple of different times and never did. I've got a Clifford security system on here. Mainly use it for the remotes. I guess some talented people know how to set these alarms off without actually touching the vehicle. I guess someday I'll have to learn what that's about. But so, hang on a second. Try to unwind this, but you can see basically here's the starter interrupt wire. You know, and these were soldered connections, but I was thinking I've had problems with these connections before. This is for the door poppers here, so that's a hot. This other yellow wire in here that you can't see behind my finger that's set up pink, that's a switched. So basically I moved all those wires to a different location and put in a new ignition switch at a cost of $128, and that wasn't really my problem. It seems like when I'd hit the brakes or turn on a turn signal or the headlights, the motor would die. So I use this for a distribution point. This is it's a solenoid, but it's not a starter solenoid. This is a plow solenoid. This is a continuous duty solenoid. It takes a little more power to run. This ignition wire. These are my battery cables coming up from the back. I tried running it with one battery cable, and I got in Mississippi and it was hot and the truck didn't want to start. So I had to run 2 cables to the back and have some way of running them down to the starter. And with the headers there, I've had problems with heat, and I wrapped them. So what I did is I came up, brought the cable up here, and then ran a cable from here where I could go further to the inside and then down to the starter. So the alternator wire hooks up here, and then the wire that goes to that fuse box over there. And I checked all these wires and everything looked good, but I was still having a problem. So then I started cleaning grounds, including the one for this. And I can't really tell you what fixed the problem, but it wasn't the ignition switch for $128. And then there's a ground here. Sorry if you're swimming upside down right now. From the body to the frame. And way back when, I put these cables in trying to get it to start better. It's a battery cable going from the frame to the block. I got one in front, I got one in back. The engine's got steel engine mounts. I don't know if you can see that. I have a steel transmission mount. So you would think this thing would be grounded till hell wouldn't have it. Somebody thought it might be the bulkhead connector. That's right here. Goes from your fuse box here through the firewall. So it took the inner fender off. Took that apart. It looked fine to me. Put it back together. Really couldn't seem to find out much. No new ideas. So then when I was in the back, had the taillights out, checked them. There's a ground. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but there's a ground back in here for rear wiring harness. So I cleaned that up as well. This truck's got like 5 coats of paint on it, and so I'm thinking some of the grounds, you know, might have issue. I got a ground here with a strap going down to the block. So basically I got out a small grinding wheel, put it on the drill. There's a ground back in there, and started cleaning up all these grounds, cleaning the paint off. And as you can see, the battery's in the back. I have two cables running to the front. I got a cable down here to the frame. Don't know if we can see that, but I think I might have it this time. So I'll go show you what we got here. Another thing that you might be interested in is these dash cameras. Aren't very expensive, and I'm in New Mexico, and people in New Mexico drive aggressively, you could say, to the point where they like to wave pistols at you. So I thought a camera would be a good addition to my truck. So one of the things I noticed is on my panel here, my master panel for the ECM, I was never running that high a voltage. So now, since I seem to have my ground problems fixed, and that seemed to be the key, when that voltage over here would drop down below 10, this thing will start up to 9 volts, down to 9 volts. And it seems like that might have been the issue more than anything. Here, I'll close this door so we don't have to listen to the buzzer. But so I'm thinking now, since I can seem to run almost full amperage, you know, volts off the alternator, I haven't had any issues. So we hope we have it fixed now. But like I say, never saw 13.7 on this gauge. Now this gauge, this panel is hooked up to a distribution panel that I have under the dash that runs off that plow solenoid. So when you're putting all this stuff in the truck, you know, like the Easy Tune, you got the TCI, back in here is the ignition module. You need all these ignition feeds, and it's hard to find them on a fuse panel or anywhere else. So that's the reason I put in that starter solenoid, or the plow solenoid, right? A continuous duty solenoid, so that feeds a 10 gauge wire that feeds my 6 ignition wires that I need to run all my extra equipment here. And that's where that panel comes off of. This unit itself was extended back to the battery. They wanted it extended to the battery, so that's what I did. So, well, I'd like to say it's been fun, but not really my idea of fun. But I think we have it now. Thanks for looking.